I love drinking these, and I love playing these. But if one of these is less than the price of one of these, can it be any good? Welcome to BoxedMeeples, I'm Julian, and today I'm talking about bargain board games. Now, you might have seen before Christmas, I managed to pick this up in a supermarket for £3.99. Now, coffee in a coffee shop is often more than £3.99, so I thought, well, can this actually be better than this, bearing in mind how much I do love coffee? Now, I know what you're thinking, that doesn't look like a real game. Well, it's on BGG, so I think that therefore counts as a real game. It's called Murder in Tinseltown, a murder mystery game, and you may well know that I'm a big fan of Detective City of Angels, so I figured if I love that game so much, maybe I will love this. It's a one-player game that also plays up to 4, but it plays in an hour and a half, and obviously we're solving some sort of murder. Let's get it to the table and see if this is actually any fun, and maybe I should just have bought another coffee. So what do you actually get in Murder in Tinseltown, a murder mystery game? Let's have a look. We have a range of standees that look like they're taking pictures of people in the office. Some standees, we can stand those up. We have some sort of track we can build here. I think this is instead of a playmat, so it allows it to fit in this slightly smaller box. We have some cards. They're the slightly bigger tarot-sized ones. We don't want to start that end, we want to start that end. What else? We have some rules, not lots of those. And we have lots of charts we can fill in to solve this murder. Looks like it can play within 5 sessions. I don't know much more about this. I'm going to know more once we play it. So to avoid spoilers, let's step into the world of a montage. So, case closed. I know who did the murdering in Tinseltown. A complete playthrough of this took me around an hour and a half, nearly 2 hours, and obviously I was playing it solo. The game itself reminded me of those kind of Cosmos adventure games that I really did enjoy. You're kind of looking at cards, being prompted to draw additional cards, and then maybe combining those cards to do a certain thing, reveal a new card, maybe ask someone about a certain thing and get a bit more information about their character and their involvement in the murdering. It's not an entirely flawless system though, because all too often you are just asking someone about it and then realizing that no, they don't know about that. But if I look further down the column, I can see other numbers. And what do they relate to? Okay, well, once I see that number prompt, oh no, I can combine that and solve the solution. It would have been much better if that answer grid was full of random numbers, and then you would have not been able to kind of brute force your way through the game. And it's quite a complex process, really, combining two, cross-referencing. Okay, that means that number. I'll use that number with that number to turn to this number in this page. And when you do that process and they just say, well, I'm sorry, I don't know anything about that, it is a little bit frustrating. We've seen this kind of card combining in other games, of course. We've seen this in Cantaloupe, and that itself was based on those old point-and-click adventure games that I used to like so much that I even wrote a book about them. Sometimes the answers are really obvious. You find a kind of film projector. Well, I've got a film wheel. I'll combine those two. Others, not so much. You kind of have to step into the game logic and work out, okay, that person would answer this question about this specific thing, even though they wouldn't answer a very similar question earlier. It's not an entirely flawless system though, because it does depend on you telling essentially the game that you've come to certain conclusions. There's a bit where I was entirely grounded. I didn't quite know what I should be doing, and I had to kind of go backwards and work out if I hadn't combined enough cards, if I'd not noticed a prompt to tell me to draw another one. And I eventually came to the conclusion that it's because I had come to a conclusion in the game, but not told the game I had. I thought it was so obvious that I didn't have to come to this revelation and say, oh, by the way, I've solved this by combining this and this. And by not doing that, by not revealing a card for something I thought was really obvious, I hadn't revealed another card which told me to step on to the next stage of the adventure. In fact, I actually got to what was essentially part 3 of the investigation before I'd done part 2 somehow. I don't quite know how I did that, but it was a case of then having to step back and retold things that I'd already knew. It's a strange situation, but bearing in mind this game was sold just before Christmas, this is clearly aimed at some sort of party situation. Yes, obviously you can play the whole game solo. I've just done that, but it would have been probably more fun if people were gathered around the table. Once you've laid out all the cards, it is a bit of a table hog, and there's so many cards to keep track of that when you're given a new prompt, which you can then combine with other numbers, there's a kind of sigh where you go, okay, we've got 30 different options we can combine this with, which is the correct one to do. Which is why maybe playing with more people would have been more fun, because then someone could be looking through the book at the results. Someone could be looking at options of things you can ask people to do things with, combinations that are possible. Doing it myself just felt a bit like busy work. Tasks I had to perform and rule out certain combinations. It became almost mechanical rather than thematic. Don't expect any writing in this that will trouble the likes of James Ellroy. There's not another LA Confidential hidden in this box. The writing isn't a patch on the things you would find in, for example, Detective City of Angels or Sherlock Consulting Detective. This is very light and treads all the usual steps you expect to see in a kind of detective mystery game based in kind of classic Hollywood. We've got communists, we've got affairs, we've got ambition. There's nothing original in here. And in fact, I've reached a conclusion on who done it largely before the end of the game. I was pretty certain who it was. And it's not really clear when you have solved the murder. You'll come up to various options and make accusations. And the instruction doesn't say that if there's not a question mark on that reveal, you haven't solved the case correctly. And even when you do, when you've gone through that whole process of wheedling out the clues, making the right connections, asking the right people the right things, and revealing the real murderer, there's no big revelation. There's no epilogue. There's no bit to read. It's just like, yep, you've solved it. Well done, you. Which, in a situation where you're playing this in a party, may feel a bit anticlimactic. That is, of course, assuming that the people playing with you in a party atmosphere have stuck it out to the end, because if you do hit a brick wall like I did, maybe be distracted and start thinking, well, what else can I do? What else can we play? Shall we just ditch this game? If you do get completely stuck, there is a solution in the back, which is where this epilogue could have been. So all things considered, it was an enjoyable hour and a half playing this game. It's not going to trouble the top of BGG. It's not going to be in anyone's top 100, but it was still enjoyable. Was it better than buying a cup of coffee? Well, yeah, probably. You know, I spent an hour and a half playing this, nearly 2 hours. A coffee lasts me 10 minutes and just gives me that extra buzz for another half an hour. Should you buy cheap games? Well, yeah, why not? It was enjoyable. if, you know, obviously not my favorite detective style game. And I do play a lot of these. So if you're not subscribed to the channel, maybe, and you enjoy detective games, maybe that's something you want to consider. And let me know in the comments down below, what detective games do you love? Which ones are probably better than Murder in Tinseltown? Have you ever played a cheap game and been surprised by how enjoyable it was? That you had low expectations of something that costs next to nothing, but it actually turned out to be one of your favourites? I'd love to hear more about that. And a good place to buy games, both cheap and obviously much more expensive, is your friendly local game store. And my friendly local game store is actually Chaos Cards in the southeast of England. But don't worry if you haven't managed to deduce your way to get to it. There is a fantastic website. And if you point and click the discount code down below, you'll save some money at the checkout. But as always, thank you so much for watching.